The wind howled across the desolate plains of Kairos, carrying with it the metallic stench of burned circuitry and forgotten dreams. Lyra Vailnar stood motionless, her violet skin a stark contrast against the ashen landscape that had once been her people's most sacred battlefield. Her silver hair, braided intricately with ceremonial war chains, whipped around her face like living tendrils of memory. Each braid told a story, generations of warrior lineage, of the celestial dominion's once unbreakable might. Now they were nothing more than relics of a dying civilization. The last remnants of her army surrounded her, their energy weapons hanging limply at their sides. Defeat wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was a crushing reality that pressed down on them like the toxic atmosphere of this dying world. Rowan Brennan stood approximately 50 meters away, seemingly relaxed despite being the epicenter of the most significant military confrontation in galactic history. His tactical gear was more patch and tear than original fabric, a testament to the brutal campaign that had brought him to this moment. "You think you can win this war alone?" Lyra's voice cut through the ambient noise, a mixture of challenge and disbelief. He turned, brushing soot from his jaw. A smile played at the corner of his mouth, not a triumphant smirk, but something more complex. Something that suggested this victory was never about personal glory. "I already did," Rowan replied simply. Behind him, something extraordinary was happening. Lyra's own soldiers, warriors who had fought beside her for decades, who had sworn blood oaths of loyalty, were lowering their weapons. Some looked confused, others looked inspired. Lyra took a step forward, her muscular frame moving with a predator's grace. The white remnants of her ceremonial undergarments, though torn and scorched, still spoke of her royal lineage. Each movement was a deliberate challenge, a final assertion of her people's dignity in the face of total defeat. How, she demanded. The question carried more weight than a simple tactical inquiry. It was a cultural challenge, a request to understand the incomprehensible. Rowan's smile softened. Not through superior firepower, not through advanced technology, through understanding. The wind picked up, carrying electromagnetic dust that glittered like broken dreams. Lyra's blue eyes, sharp, intelligent, filled with a lifetime of strategic calculation, studied Rowan with an intensity that could have melted steel. Their history was longer and more complicated than this single moment. The war between humans and the celestial dominion had raged for generations, a conflict so deeply rooted that most had forgotten its original cause. Entire star systems had been reduced to cosmic dust. Billions had died. And now, standing on this battlefield, something was changing, something fundamental. Lyra took another step forward, her people watched. Rowan's scattered units observed silently. The very atmosphere seemed to hold its breath. "Explain," she commanded. Rowan's hand, calloused from years of warfare, yet surprisingly gentle, made a small gesture. Not a military signal, something almost conversational. "We found a way to see each other," he said, "not as enemies but as people." The simplicity of the statement belied its revolutionary implication. In a conflict that had consumed multiple civilizations, someone had finally remembered the most fundamental truth. Humanity existed beyond the boundaries of species, of war, of historical grudges. Lyra's posture shifted. The warrior princess was still present, but something else emerged, a curiosity, a hint of something that might, in another context, another lifetime, have been respect. "And what happens now?" she asked. Rowan's smile became something more nuanced, something that suggested this was far from over. "Now," he said, "we talk." The Nexus Prime space station hung like a crystalline spider web against the endless black of space. Its diplomatic corridors hummed with tension, a delicate ecosystem of negotiation and unspoken threats. Curran Soloth paced the observation deck. his violet skin several shades darker than his sister Lyra's, betraying the genetic markers of their royal bloodline. His military uniform, once pristine, now bore the subtle signs of a commander who had lost everything. Elena Rodriguez watched him with eyes that had seen too much. Her human heritage was evident in the way she carried herself, a blend of diplomatic training and street-smart intuition. She had been instrumental in the peace negotiations, though peace felt like too gentle a word for the complex web of treaties and compromises being woven. "Your sister believes we can coexist," Curran said, his voice a low growl that seemed to vibrate the station's transparent walls. "She doesn't understand the depth of the betrayal." Elena raised an eyebrow. The word betrayal hung between them like a blade waiting to draw blood. "Betrayal is a matter of perspective," she replied carefully. "What Rowan Brennan did, what your people and mine are trying to do now, it's about survival, about something bigger than historical grudges." Curran's hand impossibly strong, with elongated fingers unique to his species, clenched into a fist. Tiny Neuralink tattoos along his forearm flickered with suppressed energy, a testament to the advanced biotechnology of the Celestial Dominion. "Survival," he scoffed. "My people have lost everything, our worlds, our military, our very sense of purpose." The observation deck offered a panoramic view of space. Debris from countless battles still drifted in the distance, silent monuments to a war that had consumed generations. Broken ships, shattered dreams, the remnants of civilizations that had nearly destroyed each other. Alina moved closer, her movement deliberate. She was not intimidated, a trait that had served her well in these negotiations. "Not everything is lost," she said softly. "Some things are just transforming." A communication panel flickered to life. Rowan Brennan's face appeared tired, but with that same enigmatic smile that had become infamous across multiple star systems. He nodded to Alina, then to Curran. "We've secured the first phase of the reconstruction agreement," Rowan said. His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much, yet still maintained hope. Curran's response was immediate. "And what of our cultural sites, the sacred worlds that were decimated?" The conversation was a dance, each word carefully measured, each gesture a potential diplomatic incident. Alina watched, her hand unconsciously touching the translation device embedded near her ear. Rowan's smile didn't waver. Restoration, not just rebuilding, restoration. It was more than a promise. It was a commitment to something larger than the conflict that had defined their generations. But beneath the diplomatic language, beneath the carefully constructed peace, something else was brewing. Curran's eyes, deep blue, almost luminescent, suggested that not everyone was ready to let go of the past. "Some wounds," he said quietly, more to himself than to the others, "cannot be healed by treaties." Elena caught the subtle implication, a threat, a warning, or something more complex. The station continued its silent orbit, a neutral ground where former enemies were learning to speak a new language, the language of potential peace. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the human drama unfolding within the delicate walls of Nexus Prime. The reconstruction zones stretched across 3 planetary systems, a patchwork of hope and devastation. Doran Vailnar stood at the edge of what had once been a thriving agricultural settlement on Meridian 7, her violet skin dulled by the perpetual dust that hung in the air like a morning veil. Marcus Holloway approached from behind, his footsteps deliberate, a trained intelligence officer's approach, neither threatening nor entirely casual. The environmental suit he wore was different from standard military issue, marked with diplomatic corps insignia. "The crop restoration project is showing promise," Marcus said, breaking the silence. His voice carried a hint of something between professional detachment and genuine hope. Doran turned, her blue eyes lighter than her siblings but no less intense, scanning the horizon. Unlike Lyra's warrior build or Curran's military rigidity, she embodied a different kind of strength, political, strategic, the kind that rebuilds rather than destroys. Promise, she repeated, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. We've heard that word before. The landscape told a brutal story. Terraforming machines, some human, some of celestial dominion design, crawled across the scarred terrain like mechanical insects. They worked in unison now, a testament to the fragile peace that had been negotiated. Marcus understood the weight of her skepticism. Your brother Rowan. Rowan is not my brother, Doran interrupted sharply. Rowan Brennan is the human who dismantled everything we believed about ourselves. Her hand touched a communication device, an intricate piece of technology that blended celestial dominion biomechanical design with human quantum communication principles. A physical metaphor for the uneasy alliance being forged. Marcus watched her carefully. Intelligence officers were trained to read between the lines, to understand the unspoken narratives that drove conflict. Dismantling isn't always destruction, he offered. Sometimes it's the first step to true understanding. A transport vessel descended in the distance, a hybrid design that merged celestial dominion anti-gravity technology with human propulsion systems. It was carrying agricultural supplies, medical equipment, educational resources, the building blocks of reconstruction. Doran's posture softened slightly. My sister Lyra believes in this peace. My brother Curran sees it as a temporary ceasefire. And she paused, vulnerability flickering across her face for just a moment. I'm trying to understand what comes next. Marcus took a step closer, not invasively but with a sense of shared purpose. Survival, he said simply, adaptation. The wind picked up, carrying seeds from newly planted hybrid crops, another collaboration between species that had once sought each other's total annihilation. Doran's communication device chirped. A message from Lyra, no doubt. Another thread connecting the fractured pieces of their world. The war changed everything, Doran said, more to herself than to Marcus. And nothing. In the distance, the terraforming machines continued their patient work, healing, rebuilding, creating something new from the ruins of what had been destroyed. Marcus watched her, seeing beyond the diplomatic exterior. A leader, a survivor, someone carrying the weight of generational conflict, yet still finding the courage to imagine a different future. Not everything that breaks, he said quietly, stays broken. The sky above Meridian 7 began to shift, hints of green returning to a landscape that had known only gray for generations. A promise, a beginning. The archaeological site sprawled across 3 connected planetary platforms, a marvel of suspended architecture that defied both gravitational and historical constraints. Jonathan Clark moved with the careful precision of a scientist who understood that every grain of dust could be a revelation. Arya Vailnar watched him from a distance, her younger form a study in contained curiosity. Unlike her siblings, Lyra's warrior spirit, Curran's military precision, Doran's political acumen, she embodied something more fluid, a researcher, a bridge builder. These artifacts, Jonathan said, not turning around, they're more than historical records. They're a conversation. The chamber around them was a labyrinth of holographic projections and physical remnants. Fragments of technology that predated the war, human and celestial dominion relics intertwined in ways that suggested a deeper, more complex history than either civilization had previously understood. Arya's translation device hummed softly, parsing the ancient linguistic patterns that danced between human communication matrices and celestial neurolinguistic codes. A conversation, she repeated, or an argument. Jonathan's hands moved carefully over a quantum-encrypted data crystal. Unlike most human researchers, he carried himself with a sensitivity that suggested he saw beyond mere academic discovery. Each artifact was a life, a story, a connection. The war wasn't a sudden explosion, he explained, holographic reconstructions flickering around them. It was a slow fracture, generations of misunderstanding, cultural isolation. A projection materialized two civilizations initially reaching out to each other. First contact scenarios that had gone wrong. Miscommunications, territorial disputes, fear masquerading as strength. Arya stepped closer, her blue eyes lighter than her siblings, with hints of silver at the edges caught the holographic light. And now? Jonathan's smile was complex. Now we listen. The archaeological platform itself was a testament to reconciliation. Constructed jointly by human and celestial dominion engineers, it represented more than a research site. It was a statement, a promise. Quantum-encoded data streams danced between ancient artifacts. Each fragment told a story of connections lost, of potential misunderstood, of civilizations that had more in common than they ever realized. Your brother Rowan, Jonathan said carefully, he understood something fundamental. Arya's response was immediate. That war is a failure of imagination. He nodded, impressed. Precisely. A communication burst interrupted their conversation. A message from Doran, then another from Curran. The Vailnar siblings, scattered across different roles, different perspectives, yet connected by something deeper than blood. The data crystal in Jonathan's hand pulsed. An encryption pattern emerged, a linguistic bridge between human and celestial communication systems. Not a translation, something more profound, a mutual understanding. We're not just recovering history, Jonathan said softly. We're rewriting it. Arya watched the holographic reconstructions, civilizations reaching out, misunderstandings, conflicts, and now something else, something that looked like hope. Outside the archaeological platform, space stretched infinite, mysterious, waiting. The artifacts continued their silent conversation, threads of destiny slowly being rewoven. The neutral planet of Lumina hung like a crystal in the void, its surface a delicate tapestry of restored ecosystems and architectural marvels that blended human and celestial dominion design. Rowan Brennan stood at the central diplomatic chamber, surrounded by the key architects of the peace, each carrying the weight of a war that had nearly consumed two civilizations. Lyra Vailnar approached first, no longer in battle armor, but in diplomatic attire that spoke of both her royal lineage and her warrior past. Her silver hair was braided with threads of diplomatic insignia, a visual representation of her transformed role. "We are not here to forget," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen both the depths of conflict and the potential of peace. Curran stood to one side, his posture still military, but his eyes now reflecting a complexity of emotion. Elena Rodriguez was nearby, her hand resting, almost imperceptibly, near his, a subtle indication of the personal connections that had begun to form in the wake of destruction. Doran entered next with Marcus Holloway. Her political acumen was evident in every measured step. Behind them, Arya and Jonathan arrived, carrying the weight of historical understanding. Rowan's smile, the same enigmatic expression that had first challenged Lyra on the battlefield of Kairos, held a depth of meaning now. This was not a moment of triumph, but of profound transformation. "We're here to understand," he said, addressing not just those in the room, but the generations that had suffered, the civilizations that had been torn apart. Jonathan stepped forward, presenting a holographic reconstruction. It was more than a historical record, it was a narrative of connection. The projection showed the first moments of contact between humans and the celestial dominion, revealing layers of misunderstanding that had escalated into war. Our conflict, he explained, was never about fundamental differences. It was about fear, about the inability to see each other's humanity, or in this case, our fundamental sentience. Curran, who had been the most resistant to peace, spoke next. We lost more than worlds, we lost ourselves. Alina's hand found his, a gesture of solidarity that would have been impossible years ago. Arya's research had uncovered something profound, linguistic and cultural bridges that predated the conflict. Artifacts that suggested not just coexistence, but potential cooperation. Lyra approached Rowan. The tension between them had transformed from battlefield enemies to something more complex. Respect, understanding, perhaps something deeper. We thought we were fighting for survival, she said softly. We didn't realize we were fighting against our own potential. The diplomatic chamber itself was a testament to reconciliation. Designed with input from both civilizations, it incorporated architectural elements that blended form and function, past and future. Marcus presented the first joint reconstruction plan not just of worlds but of cultural exchange. Educational programs, technological collaborations, a future built on mutual understanding. This is not an end, Doran said, her voice clear and strong. This is a beginning. Outside, the planet of Lumina continued its slow rotation. Terraforming machines, human and celestial dominion designs working in perfect synchronization, continued their patient work of healing. Rowan looked at Lyra, she looked back. The battlefield of Kairos seemed like a lifetime ago. We think we can win alone, he said, echoing their first encounter. But we've learned something more important. Lyra finished the thought, we can build together. The diplomatic chamber fell silent, but it was not the silence of defeat or resignation. It was the silence of possibility, of hope. Of a future being born.